yes, we will also be spending time practicing, yes, taking all sorts of numbers, placing them in various sentences, yes, to practice how to use numbers. But today, what will be different is today we won't be just using sentences as a way of practicing using numbers. Now we're actually going to use a context. Okay, no longer just a sentence, but a whole flowing context. Let's say we have A and B. Now, this is A. And this is B. But we actually have someone else here. We have B's little daughter, let's say. Okay, so we have A and B, and we have B's little daughter. Okay, so let's call her C because she's a child. Okay, let's just say. So now, A, it's not the first time A is seeing B's daughter. He did, but that was 2 years ago. Okay, so now A is going to ask, oh, is she now 6 years old? And B is going to say, no, she's 7. Okay, so A is going to say, oh my god, she's 7? Time is flying. I thought that she would be 6 at most. Okay, so let's say she is already 7. And then, okay, so now this is something that we are learning throughout this course, right? The fact that in Korean, yes, you will always have some kind of a counting or quantifying unit. So that's why, yes, knowing how to say 3 and book is not enough to say 3 books. You need a counting unit for books, okay, which is kwon, right? So you're saying 3 kwons of books. Okay, so what is the unit for age then? Okay, so now it depends. It depends whether you are speaking, for example, colloquial, in other words, conversational Korean. Because, for example, if it's professional Korean, for example, then it would be different. Okay, so yes, now usually when do you use native Korean numbers and when do you use Sino numbers? We already know this, right? So you use native Korean numbers when you're counting how many. Okay, so for example, yeah, I always say look at the unit that you're using, right? I said kwon is a counting unit for books. Okay, so you're saying 책 두 권. Sorry. Okay, so 2 kwons of books. Now, always take a look at the unit and ask yourself, what is this unit for? It's for books. And also ask yourself, are books something that I can count by saying how many? Is that possible? Well, I would say yes, because I can say, how many books do you read a month? Or something like that. Okay, so if you can count books by saying how many, yeah, then you're counting how many. So you use native Korean numbers. Sorry, native Korean numbers for that. On the other hand, yes, when the unit that you are using is not for something that is counted by saying how many, for example, temperature, yeah, 도, degrees. This 도 unit is for temperature. Now, you don't count temperature by saying how many, right? You don't say, oh, it's pretty warm today. How many temperatures do we have? You don't say that. So that tells you that you are not counting, you are either quantifying or labeling. Okay, so in that case, I would say I'm quantifying how warm it is. Also, for another example, like distance. If I'm gonna say, are we there yet? And my friend says, no. I think we still have a long way to go. And let's say I want to say, so usually the unit that you use for distance in Korea is kilometer. Okay, kilometers. So now I want to ask, well, how many? So kilometer, that's the unit that is the unit that I'm going to use in this context, right? I'm going to use kilometer. Okay, so what is the unit for? Always go through this thought process. First, take a look at the unit. I'm going to say something kilometers. Now, kilometer, what is it for? It's for distance. Now, is this distance something that you count by saying how many? Do you say, how many distances do we have left? Do you say that? Of course not. Okay, so that's why when you're talking about distance and therefore you're using, for example, kilometers, yes, you are not counting, you're quantifying or labeling. In that case, once again, I am quantifying distance. Okay, so in that case, yes, you use Sino numbers. Always take a look at the unit and ask yourself, what is this unit for? Okay, so yeah, distance or even weight. Yeah, for example, if I'm asking someone, how heavy is your bag? Now I'm gonna say, so I'm gonna use once again kilogram for that in Korea. So I'm gonna place the unit kilograms and I'm gonna ask myself, what is this unit for? It's for weight. Do I say how many weights is your bag? No. So therefore, I'm quantifying Sino numbers. Okay, so yeah, that's how you know whether you should use native or Sino numbers. However, there are exceptions variables, right? Okay, so yes, for example, yeah, hour. So time is not something that you count by saying how many. You don't say how many time do we have left. So that's why most units for time, minute, second, year, month, week, day, yes, they use Sino numbers as they should, but only hour, yes, is going to break the rule and be called an exception and use native Korean numbers. Okay, so in the list of typical exceptions, you see age. Yes, this is what I'm trying to use right now. So once again, age, how you talk about age would be different depending on whether you're speaking colloquial, in other words, conversational Korean, or for example, like professional Korean. Okay, so in colloquial Korean, conversational Korean, yes, age is an exception because, yeah, now I'm going to use this unit, 살. 살 is the unit for age in colloquial Korean, not in professional Korean. It will be different. Anyway, I'm going to ask myself then, okay, what is this unit for? It's for age. Now, is age something that I count by saying how many? Do I say, how many ages is she? No. So, yeah, I should be using Sino numbers, but that's why it's called exceptions, right? That's why they are variables. So, colloquial, yes, in colloquial Korean, age uses native Korean numbers, and the unit will be 살. Okay, so let's use native Korean numbers. Now, let's go to page number 8. The unit for age, 살, only in colloquial Korean, yes, would be, of course, 살. Therefore, I am going to say something like 42 sals of age. Okay, so in Korean, that's what you're saying. Because you have a unit for that, you're saying 42 sals of age. As a way of saying 42 years old. Okay, 42살. 42살. So usually, if you're using this 살 for age, you don't really have to say 나이, age, because it's kind of too obvious, right? Yes, 살 is uniquely for age. So therefore, you don't really have to say 나이. So 42살, 42 sals of age. It's just that the age part was omitted. Okay, so, well, then, oops, yeah. I'm gonna say, oh, she is already 7 sals of age. Okay, so what does that mean? I am going to be, yes, omitting the plural. It's too obvious, right? I literally said 7, and yes, of age is kind of too obvious, so therefore we won't be saying it. Okay, now no is, am, was, were, are. We have the adverb already. And yes, now, all counting units and quantifying units, they can be nouns. Okay, so now why am I emphasizing this? Because if that's the case, this is a sentence in which I'm just saying a noun is a noun. Because, yeah, counting or quantifying units are nouns. So she is a noun, including pronouns. Okay, so forget about already. Just focus on the core of the structure of the sentence. I'm saying a noun is a noun. She is 7 sals. Just like when you're saying, I am a singer. Okay, or I am a soldier, or whatever. Okay, so if you're saying a noun is a noun, then you're saying a subject is a subject complement. Okay, so yeah, we have the subject she, it's just that it's going to be omitted. And we have the subject complement, 7살. Okay, it's just that we're going to place already the adverb in front of the subject complement. Okay, so how are we going to say this then? Now, yes, there are enlarged two versions of alreadys that you have to know, right? And right now, the speaker is surprised. Okay, so if the speaker is surprised, which version would you use? Exactly, yes. There are two versions of already that you should use, right? 이미 and 벌써. Okay, yes. If the speaker is not surprised, then 이미. If the speaker is surprised, then 벌써. Okay. So that's why I always say you decide what you want to say, but the context decides how you will say it. So that's why in Korean, context is very important. Once again, you always have to keep this in mind. This doesn't just apply to numbers. Whatever you do in Korean, you always have to remind yourself, yeah, I decide what I want to say, but the context decides how you will say it. Okay, so because the context will say, yeah, according to the context, are you surprised? Are you not surprised? Okay, so, wait, where's the eraser? Okay. Now, yes, right now, A is surprised because, yeah, A is saying, oh my god, time is flying. Yeah, the last time I saw you, you were still like a baby. Yeah, she's already 7살 of age, so we are gonna have A surprised. Okay, but of course, if A was not surprised, just saying, oh yeah, she's 7 years old. She's already 7 years old. Then if she's not surprised, yeah, A would have used 이미. Okay, so 벌써. And then, yes, we need 7, but once again, this time we need it in native Korean numbers, right? Okay, yeah, so native Korean numbers. 일곱, 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 right? Okay, so let's place 일곱. And then, yes, 살스. Okay, so, yes, now in Korean, a subject complement can never end a sentence, right? A sentence can never end with a subject complement. So therefore, we need an ending mark behind it. Okay, so because the subject complement ends with a consonant, yes, I will attach 이에요. Okay, so 벌써 7살이에요. 벌써 7살이에요. 벌써 7살이에요. Okay, does that make sense? If it does, should we move on? 넘어갈까요? Okay. 벌써 7살이에요. Okay. So, yes. No, the 이나 or 나 particle cannot be used in this situation. Yes, because if you're going to use the 이나 or 나 particle, so when are they used? There are in large 3 situations when these particles are used, right? And one of them, there are 3 things that they can do. One of them is to indicate that the speaker is looking at the number as a big number. Okay, now, yes, yeah, A is looking at 7 as a big number because A was expecting maybe you're 6 at most, but 7? Oh my god, time's flying. Okay, so it does make sense. I like the thought process. However, if you're gonna use ina or na, yes, you do not use it with a subject complement. So, yeah, if you want to do it, then you have to change the position, the part of speech of 7살's into something other than a subject complement. For example, you can maybe try to say, oh, she became 7 살's of age using a verb, became. Okay, but right now we're not using any verbs or adjectives, so therefore we're just simply saying subject and subject complement, right? So in this case, 이나 or 나, they are not used for subject complements. Okay, does that make sense? If it does, 계속할까요? Should we continue? Okay, and one more thing. This does not have anything directly to do with numbers. However, now I did omit she because it's too obvious, right? Of course, I'm talking about she. Okay, but for whatever reason, let's say I wanted to keep she. Now, even so, even if that's the case, I will never ever use the word she because, yeah, what is the slogan of this curriculum? What is the slogan? Escape Poetic Korean, right? Because Poetic Korean is the version that is taught because it's the easiest to teach and the easiest to learn. However, yeah, once again, Poetic Korean cannot be used in real conversations, right? I'm not going to say it cannot be used, it shouldn't be used. Okay, so now there are so many things that fall into the poetic category. However, yeah, even if I take all of them and make a list and try to say like, oh, which one is more poetic than the other? Yeah, there's rarely anything that is more poetic than he or she. 그녀 or 그. Yeah, there are so many words, grammar forms, way of speaking that are poetic, but yeah, it's very hard to trump 그녀 and 그, she and he. Yeah, when it comes to how poetic something sounds. 그녀 and 그 are at the pinnacle of, yes, you sounding poetic if you use them. Now, you can use them if you're trying to be poetic or you're just trying to do it you're doing it on purpose just to be goofy. So you can use it in playful Korean. Okay, so don't say 그녀 or 그. It sounds extremely and intimidatingly poetic. Okay. Anyway, so A said, oh my god, she's already 7 years old. 벌써 7살이에요. Okay, so now B is going to say, oh yeah. So you saw her 2 years ago, right? You saw her. Oh yeah, I guess for you, it's very surprising. Of course, B is C's dad, so of course he sees her every day, but B's saying, oh yeah, okay, I guess for you it could feel like time's flying because you saw her 2 years ago, right? Okay, so let's try to have B say that. Okay, oops, her. Okay, so yes, of course I'm talking to you, and of course I'm talking about her. So I'm going to take the verb saw, and I'm gonna give it the right ending. Okay, and 2 years ago we have time. Okay, and of course we're gonna start with yes. 네. Yeah, she is already 7 years old. Okay, so now we need 2 years ago, so we need a number. And yes, what are we using numbers for? We're using it for time, okay? Because I'm going to use the unit year. Once again, always take a look at the unit that you're using and ask yourself, what is this unit for? What is the unit year for? It's for time, right? So is time something that you count by saying how many? Do you say, how many time does it take, right? No. You don't say that, right? You don't say how many time does that take? No. So therefore, you are not counting how many, you are quantifying, which means that, yes, you will use Sino numbers. Okay. So that's why page number 5 says, yes, when you are not counting, you're not counting, you're quantifying or labeling Sino numbers. That's why time falls into this category. Once again, as I did say a little while ago, there is one time unit that is the exception, hour, but we're not using the exception, we're using year. Okay, so Sino numbers, as that should be the case. Okay, so we need 2 in Sino numbers. Okay, yeah, so page number 4, E, right? E, 2. So let's place 이 as 2 and then 년, 2 years. And then, yes, when you are placing ago as a way of modifying time, then place 전에, 2년 전에. And then 보다, see, right? But of course, I don't want its display form. Why? Because literally a display form is nothing. It's just a drawing. It has no grammatical function or attribute whatsoever. It's the same as this. Okay, so I need its actual form, past tense. I'm not going to go into the details of inflection, in other words, conjugation right now. So first, I'm going to give it the past tense ending, 보았어요. But I have to use two endings at the same time. So yes, the trick is whenever you have a double S in the first ending that you used, the 써요 ending, the past actual form, past tense ending, that's where you stop. And then, yes, I'm going to place the 조 plus question mark ending. The 조 plus question mark ending is a no route ending, meaning I can just immediately attach it to whatever I am attaching it to as long as there is no 다 in the way. Okay, so now I have 2년 전에 봤죠? 2년 전에 봤죠? 2년 전에 봤죠? So A said, 벌써 7살이에요? Oh, she's already 7 years of age? And B can say, 네, 2년 전에 봤죠? Yeah, at the time she was 5, so she grew a lot, right? Okay, does that make sense? If it does, 넘어갈까요? Should we move on? Okay. Now once again, I always emphasize this, right? 항상 강조해요. I always emphasize this. Yeah, the 조 ending is very useful. But, yeah, there are so many things that the 조 ending can do, but some of the things are things that it shouldn't do, right? So you do have to be careful when it comes to using the 조 ending. But, yeah, if you're gonna use it as an ending that imbues the nuance of right, don't worry, you can use it in real Korean as well. Okay. Anyway, 네, 2년 전에 봤죠? Okay, so now, right now we are in 2026. So, what is 2 years ago then? It's 2024, right? Okay, so let's say, yeah, A did see B's daughter in 2024, but not just once. A is going to say, yeah, 네. Yes, I did see her in 2024. I saw her Now we're going to say 2 times. 2 times. Okay, we're not going to say twice, we're going to say 2 times in 2024. Okay, so, yes. Now let's try to say this then. We have two numbers. Of course, I'm talking about I, and of course, I'm talking about her. And I have the verb saw. And then, yeah, when you're counting how many times you did something, like how many times did you practice? How many times did you come here? Yes, look at it as an adverb. And yeah, in 2024, time. Okay, so let's first say 네. And then, yes, time, adverb, verb, right? Okay, so we have a big number, 2024, 2024. Okay, once again, we're talking about time, and outside of hour, all other time units usually follow sino numbers. They use sino numbers. Okay. So, let's go to sino numbers. Now, yeah, building big numbers in sino numbers, well, it's not that complicated, right? Okay, so I always say, take a look at the list here, the chart here, to the left, bottom left. Okay, so take a look at the number and ask yourself, now within the number I am using, what is the biggest unit I need on this chart, on this list? 2024, do we have 1만? 만 is 10,000. No. Right? We only have 2,000. So we don't need a man, but we do have 1,000 there. We need two of them actually, 2,000. So I'm going to find the biggest unit on this chart first within the number I'm using. And yeah, I'm going to just ask myself, well, there's 1,000 in this number. How many of them do I need? I need two of them. So I'm going to say two thousands. 2,000. 2,000. Exactly. We don't have a man here. We only have a 천. Actually, not a 천. We have two chons. So 2,000. So now we have 2,000. Okay, but yeah, we still need 24, right? Okay, so yeah, we already took care of 2,000. Do that just one more time. Yeah, the thought process should look exactly the same. I already took care of 2,000. So I'm going to start with 24. The same question. What is the biggest unit here that I need on the chart? I don't have 100 here in 24. No, I just have a 10. 10. But how many of them do I need? I need two of them. 20. Okay, so 20. And then, yes, now we just need 4. 4 in Sino numbers. 2024. Okay, but there can be a little bit of a difference between English and Korean when you're talking about what year we are in. Okay, so 2024. And then we're going to still place 년 as the unit. So in Korean, you're not just saying 2024, you have to say the year of 2024. Okay, 2024년. 2024년, the year of 2024. Okay, so now what happens if you say just 2024? I'm not going to say people will never understand, but it will still take some time for them to compute trying to understand what you're saying. And of course, because we have something called common sense, if the context helps, saying like, oh, I arrived here in 2024, of course, they will come to the conclusion that you're trying to talk about time, but it's not natural at all. In Korean, yes, always, you will have 년. So you're saying the year of 2024. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so 2024년 and then let's place because can play the role of in when it's modifying a time word, right? 네, 2024년에 and then 2 times. Okay, so don't get confused. Right now we talked about time. Now times is different, right? Yeah. Time and times with an S is different because time is not something that you count by saying how many. You don't say how many time do we have left. But yeah, times is different when you're saying how many times, yeah, did you see her? How many times did you fix it? So yeah, you can literally count it by saying how many. Okay, so when you're saying how many times did I do it? How many times did you do it? Now, once again, it will be different depending on the format of Korean that you are using. Okay, so that's why I always say the question that you should ask yourself constantly when it comes to learning Korean until the day you master it is not how good am I? No, that's not the first question. The first question should always be what kind of Korean is this? Okay, because when you're talking about how many times, it's different. Are you speaking colloquial Korean, poetic Korean, playful Korean, exam Korean, soldier Korean, or professional Korean? Okay, so I just listed a couple of typical exceptions. Anyway, yeah, when you're talking about how many times you did something. Okay, so in professional Korean, the unit would be 회. And you will use Sino numbers. However, yeah, in colloquial conversational Korean, it will be different. Okay, so because you are counting something, how many times, we'll use native Korean numbers. And there's also something that you do have to keep in mind here. Let's go to page number 9. I'm sorry. Let's go get something. Okay, let's go to page number 9. there's something different here, right? Compared to like page number 8, for example. Yeah, I said in Korean, when you're talking about, for example, well, counting something, yes, you always need some kind of a counting unit. That's why knowing how to say 5 and car is not enough to say 5 cars. You cannot do that. You have to have some kind of a unit. Yeah, the counting unit for vehicles like car, a motorcycle, an airplane, anything is 대. So actually you have to say 차, 5대. So you're not saying 5 cars, you're saying 5 대s of cars. Okay, so now that means that 대 doesn't actually mean car, right? We're not saying 5 cars. No, 대 is not actually the word car. Okay, so that means, yeah, you need 3 things. The actual word of the thing that you're using, counting, the actual number, and the counting unit. However, sometimes you do actually use actual words when you're counting. Sometimes there are exceptions like that too. That's what page number 9 talks about. Okay, so now, in page number 9, I'm showing you a couple of examples in which you are actually using real words as counting units. Just like you say, 3 cups of coffee. I used cup as a way of, using it. I used it as a counting unit, but cup is a word that I can actually use. I need a cup. Do you have a cup? Oh, this cup is cute. Okay, so yeah, these are some typical examples in which you would use actual words for, yes, counting units. In this case, yeah, so 번 will literally be translated into time. When you're saying times, I should say. Yeah, when you're saying I did it 2 times, I did it 87 times. But once again, only in colloquial Korean. In professional Korean, it will be different. Okay, so now this is a little bit of a trap, right? And so this doesn't just apply to numbers, but I'm sure that some of you sparkles are at this point sick and tired of hearing me say this. But what do I always say? There are 2 fundamental barriers when it comes to learning Korean. Well, let's say something that deceives you, I should say. And one of them is if you can see something, that's not how you can speak. So this can be very deceiving and confusing, especially for people in Korea. Because always you have to ask a fundamental question, right? If I can see it, why was I able to see it? Why was this shown to me? Because it's professional Korean. If not, why would you be able to see it? If I have a private conversation with my sister, I have a sister who's 2 years older than me. Yeah, I sometimes text her, how are you? Yeah, what are you doing? No problem? Like, is everything okay? Okay, so now that conversation that I have with my sister, nobody is able to see it because I'm not going to make a sign out of it and put it in the streets and say, hey people, please can you look at what me and my sister say to each other every day? I'm not going to do that. So, of course, if you can see something, that's 99.9% of the time professional Korean. Okay, so that's why if I can see something, that's not how I can speak. Okay, so anyway, you do have to always keep in mind that professional business Korean and of course conversational Korean can be very different. Of course, playful Korean, soldier Korean, and poetic Korean, exam Korean as well. Okay, so yeah, if you're watching the news or something, reading an article, anything that you see online on a website or something, yes, it will be usually professional Korean. But 번 can only be used, so therefore 번 can only be used in colloquial Korean, conversational Korean. Okay. So anyway, yeah, when I'm saying I did it 3 times, 7 times, yes, I'm gonna use 번. And because I am talking about something that I can count by saying how many, yeah, I'm gonna use native Korean numbers. Okay. So let's go back to, just give me a second. A list for native Korean numbers. Okay. Yeah. So, native Korean numbers. In native Korean numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4 have a separate format in red, right? Okay, so we're not going to use, 둘, right? We're going to use 두. Why is that? Because, yeah, usually, of course, there are rare exceptions, but usually, yes, 하나, 둘, 셋, 넷, the separate format in red, are used when you're not using numbers for any kind of a function. You're not counting, you're not quantifying, you're not labeling anything. You're just saying saying the numbers for the sake of saying the numbers. For example, yeah, if someone says, hey, do you know how to write numbers in like German, whatever? Yeah, let's say, yeah. Or let's say someone says, I want to see your handwriting in German. Can you please write something? Just anything? And this person says, just anything? Well, I can't think of anything that I want to write. And I'm going to say, just write 1, 2, 3, 4. I just want to see your handwriting in German. Okay, so in that case, we're not using numbers to count anything. We're not using numbers to quantify, and we're not labeling anything either. So usually that's when you would say 하나, 둘, 셋, 넷. But right now, we are using numbers to count. How many times did you see her? I saw her twice, 2 times. So we're going to use 두. Okay, so 2024년에 두 번, 2 times. 두 번, and then, yes, 보다, but of course I don't want its display form. I want its actual form in past tense. 보았어요. Okay, so all together, now we have the whole 문장. 천천히 읽을게요. I will read it slowly. 네, 2024년에 두 번 봤어요. 네, 2024년에 두 번 봤어요. 네, 2024년에 두 번 봤어요. I saw her 2 times in the year of 2024. Okay, does that make sense? If it does, 넘어갈까요? Should we move on? Okay. So, oops, I'm sorry. Sorry. We're going to do one more. I'm sorry. I just habitually just erased A and B and C. Anyway, so A is looking at his close friend's daughter. Okay, so of course, yeah, he loves B's daughter too. Yeah, you're my friend's daughter. Of course, I love you too. Okay, so let's say A is just going to give her like a little bit of pocket money for, like you sometimes do that for children, right? Go get some ice cream or something like that. Okay, so let's say A is trying to give B's daughter a little bit of money. Okay, so now let's say I'm going to give her 5만 won. Okay, so yeah, if you look at, once again, page number 4 and the chart list here on the bottom left, yes, you would notice that compared to English, for example, the system in which numbers get bigger and bigger are very different in Korean, right? For example, yeah, you don't say 10,000 in Korean. You don't say 10,000 because 10,000 is 1만. Just like you don't say 1,000, right? Because 1,000 is 1,000. Okay, so it's exactly the same concept. 10,000 is 1만. Okay, so if you're gonna say something like 50,000, yeah, that's 5만 in Korean. Okay, so yeah, let's say A is going to give B's daughter a little bit of money. Yeah, go get some ice cream or something like that. But he's going to give her 5만 won. Okay, so just like dollars in the US, for example, 1 in Korea. Okay, so we're going to give her 5만 won. Once again, now, are we going to use Sino numbers? Yes, for 2 reasons, right? There are 2 reasons why I'm going to use Sino numbers here. Number 1, yeah, because money is not something that I count by saying how many. I don't say how many money do you need? No, I say how much money do you need? Okay, so because it's not something that I would count by saying how many, yes, I'm going to use Sino numbers. But that's not the only reason, right? So even if I am counting something by using the word 5만, I still would have used Sino numbers, right? Because native Korean numbers are usually only used up to 99. Okay, so of course 5만, 50,000 far exceeds 99. So we're going to use Sino numbers. Yeah, so 5 in Sino numbers. Oh, so we're going to say 5만 원. 5만 원. 5만 원. 5만 원. So 5만 won as a way of saying 50,000 won. Okay, so A is trying to give B's daughter 5만 won. So now B is going to say, hey, that's too much. Yeah, 5만 won for a 7-year-old child just to go get some ice cream. I'm not sure about the exact exchange rate at the moment, but 5만 won would be about 33 US dollars right now. So let's say B thinks that that's too much. $33 for an ice cream? Come on, yeah, don't do that. So you'll spoil her. Okay, so B is going to say, yeah, now you give her 5만 원. Okay, but yes, technically this does take the form of a question, but this is not really a question, right? B's just saying, hey, what, you're giving her 5만 원? Come on, yeah, that's too much. So it's not really a question. Anyway, so that's what B is trying to say. You're giving her 5만 원? That's too much for ice cream. Come on, you'll spoil her. Anyway, so we have the verb give, and we have the object 5만 원. Okay, so now, once again, always you have to keep in mind, I decide what I want to say, but the context decides how you will say it. So let's first start with an interjection, like the ohs, the ahs, the wows. Okay, so let's use an interjection that you use when you are indicating that I don't believe something. So because A is basically saying, yeah, I think 5만 won is a reasonable amount of money that I will give you for ice cream. That's what A is basically saying. B wants to say, hey, I don't believe that it's the reasonable amount of money. It's too much. So do you remember an interjection that you can use when you are expressing that you don't believe something? 감사합니다. Okay, so what would be that interjection? Exactly, yes. Exactly, yeah. I'm going to use A. And I'm usually going to drag my tone a little bit, right? A. Okay, so the interjection A is used in large in two situations, right? Number one, when you don't believe something, or when you're simply disappointed. Okay, so right now, B is using it for reason number one. Oh, you're basically saying, oh, I think 5만 원 is a reasonable amount of money. Now, I'm saying, I don't believe that that's the case. I think it's too much. You'll spoil her. So, A. And then, now, we know how to say 5만 원 using Sino numbers, right? And then, yeah, a little while ago, one of you, yeah, some sparkles, not one of you, but some sparkles brought up something that is very, very important and useful, right? The ina or na particle. Yeah, I think it's a perfect situation for us to use it right now. Because once again, ina or na indicates that the speaker is looking at a number as a big number, right? Yeah, that's what B is doing right now. B is saying, 5만 원, 50,000 won, that's too big of a number. Okay, so I can use 5만 원이나 5만 원이나 5만 원이나. Okay, so once again, keep in mind, does this mean big? Does this mean number? Of course not. So don't try to translate it. You have to understand what it does. Don't translate what it means. Understand what it does. Okay, so 5만 원이나 and then give. So yeah, 주다. Of course, I don't want its display form. I want its actual form in present tense. So according to the rules of inflection route number one, I'm going to give it the yu ending by removing ta adding an extra vowel, forming a double vowel, and then attaching the yo ending. 조요, 조요, 조요. Okay, so now I am going to place a question mark here, and usually in Korean, yes, if something is a question, yeah, the pitch goes up at the very last syllable, right? Okay, so now I would have done that if this is genuinely a question, but once again, try to read the context and the nuance that comes from it. This is really not a question. Of course, I know that you're giving her 5만 원. I'm literally watching you do that. I'm just saying, you're giving her 5만 원? Come on, that's too much. So I'm not really asking a question out of genuine curiosity. So therefore, yeah, I'm going to place it here, the question mark, but I'm not going to have my pitch go up at the very last syllable. Does that make sense? If it does, 계속할까요? Should we continue? Okay. Now, I'm gonna do just one more thing. I'm just gonna do one more thing because this will be done all the time. Yeah, Koreans will do it habitually all the time to the point where they don't even know that they're doing it. They're oblivious of it. Okay, so once again, now we did do it a couple of times. Well, maybe once. 물. So before we actually talk about this, yeah, I have to talk about the pronunciation regarding, the tip when it comes to pronunciation, right? I'm sure that some of you sparkles are already guessing what I'm about to say. Yes, this wa double vowel here, yes, usually does sound like wall, very close to when you say walk in English. However, in two cases typically, it just sounds like o, right? And those two situations happen to be when it's paired with the consonant J or M. Okay, so if that's the case, we happen to be in both of those situations. First, I'm not going to say 좋아요, I'm going to say 조요, as if it's written like this. Of course, I'm not going to actually write it like that, but I'm going to say 조요, I'm not going to say 좋아요. So, yeah, if you say, well, it's technically a wall, so I will do wall. Well, that could feel like someone saying, I refuse to say unique. I'm going to say unique way. Okay, so, well, you won't be arrested for doing that, but I don't really advise you to do that. Okay, if you want to, of course, you can do whatever you want. Okay, so the same with 물. I'm not going to say 무얼. I'm going to say 물, as if it's written like this. I'm not going to actually spell it like that, like this, but I'm going to read it, pronounce it as if it is 물, not 무얼. Okay, so anyway, yeah, this 물, yeah, if you just try to look at it technically, now it is what or something, right? 뭐 can be what or something. And you can see an object particle here, an abbreviation of 를, which is an object particle. So if you try to understand it technically, now what happens is you're going to translate it as what or something as the object, like I bought something. I, the subject, bought the verb something, the object. Okay, something like that. However, yeah, sometimes that is how it will be used, but a lot of times it's kind of just like a filler word that just has a nuance to it. Yeah, don't try to think of it as literally what or something as the object, because in this case that makes no sense whatsoever, right? You already have an object. Okay, so when people just say 물 in a situation where it obviously cannot be something or what as the object, they're just putting it there to imbue the nuance of you thinking of something as something ridiculous. Okay, so let's say my friend is going to go meet someone. Now this person is known for scamming people, let's say. So this person came to my 친구, friend, and says, hey, can I talk to you about something? I have a really smart business plan or investment opportunity. Okay, so all you have to do is give me all of your money. Yeah, give me all of your money. Put all of your money into my bank account, and I promise that, I'll give it back to you. If you give me $100, I'll give it back to you. I'll give back to you 500. Okay, so now this is obviously suspicious and obviously a bad idea. Okay, so I thought that my friend would not even entertain meeting him. But guess what? he says, "Oh yeah, I'll be late today. I'm gonna go meet that guy that I mentioned 2 days ago. The guy who says he has a smart investment plan, whatever." Okay, so I'm gonna say, "What? You're going? You're gonna go? You go there to meet him?" I'm gonna say 뭘 가요. I'm just gonna say 뭘 가요. I'm not using 뭘 as what or something as the object. Yeah, because go is an intransitive verb, which means that it's a verb that can only modify subjects. First of all, I'm not going to use 뭘 as what or something as the object, and even if I am trying to, I cannot use it with go. Go can only modify subjects. You can't say I go, she go, me. Yeah, the subject, the object. Okay, so in English, the subject is something that comes before the verb and object after the verb, right? Go is an intransitive verb, meaning that it can only modify subjects. It does not modify objects. Transitive verbs modify objects. Okay, so yeah, of course, in this case, according to the structure of the sentence, you can tell that 뭘 is not literally being used as what or something as the object. Okay, so in that case, yeah, it's just kind of like a filler word that imbues the nuance of the speaker viewing something as something ridiculous. Okay, so I'm saying the idea of you going, that's ridiculous. So I'm going to say 뭘 가요. 가지 마요. 뭘 가요. Okay, so I'm going to use it like that here because B is saying, hey, you're just giving a 7-year-old child just to go get an ice cream. I don't think 5만 원. I think 5만 원 is ridiculous. You'll spoil her. So we're gonna say, 에이, 뭘 5만 원이나 줘요. 에이, 뭘 5만 원이나 줘요. 에이, 뭘 5만 원이나 줘요. Okay, does that make sense? If it does, 넘어갈까요? Should we move on? Okay. So now this is always why I say I used to have a part-time job feeding the translator with information to train it. Now that's why I look at it as an old friend of mine, and that's why I hate it when it gets too much criticism that is not deserved. Okay, because once again, yeah, the translator in Korean will always say, "You're giving me a sentence." In Korean, that's not how things work. I don't translate sentences. I don't know how to say this because the context decides how to say it. Okay, I'm sorry, TikTok is asking me to verify myself. Okay, yeah, so meaning I can give you 5만 원 and 줘요 for maybe, but also 줘요 can look different depending on the nuance, right? Anyway, so, but are you going to say, hey, are you disappointed? Are you not believing something? Do you find something ridiculous or not? Are you viewing 5 as a big number or small number? I don't know that. That's not my job. That's your job. Okay, so that's why, yeah, it's up to you. Can you make it colorful with nuance? Okay, because nothing will ever just be said. There's always going to be some kind of nuance because people have emotions and thoughts, and that's why there's always nuance according to the context. Okay, so, 에이, 뭘 5만 원이나 줘요. Okay, so yeah, the translator would say, let's say you needed this, but it didn't give it to you, or you didn't want it, but it did give it to you. Don't blame the translator, my good old friend. I'm not saying that you are, but yeah, my good old friend would say, well, that's not my fault. How do I know if you're viewing 5 as a big number? Yeah, what if you were expecting 7 만 원, and A gave her 5만 원, then you wouldn't have used this. Well, you have to tell me that then. Okay. So anyway, so that was it for the 5th class out of the 8 that altogether constitute the number course. We're already building big numbers, but we're going to build complicated numbers like 7,322 or something like that. We did take a glimpse of it when we were saying 2024, but we'll do more of that